Hey guys, this is Treynor from Papillion Pokemon, and it's been requested that I run a deck building tutorial for the people in our group. So, anyways, I'm going to start with I'd say, a generic deck, which is my Crobat Gengar deck, which I took to Nebraska States and made Top Cut with. Now, this deck is what I'd say exactly, it's a generic deck. Like, it has everything that I think a deck needs to actually be a deck. Now, there's a lot of different things that a lot of different other people say that a deck needs, and people run variations of this. That's fine, but this is what I do. Now, I think every deck starts with two Uxies and one Azelf. Any deck. Uxies for their setup power, and then Azelfs to allow you to look at your prize cards and also pick a Pokemon out of your prize cards. Now, I'm sorry about the World Championship cards. I have the real cards. It's just that they're in my competition deck, which is my Chenlock deck. So, that's a starting point. Every deck should have two Uxies and an Azelf. Now, another good thing that you got to consider when you make a deck is you have to have a good Pokemon to start with. The ideal start Pokemon, and in this deck it is Sableye. For the impersonate power, which lets me impersonate a supporter, like in case I don't have one in my hand, and also I could recover with this card, I could start with this card, I could play any supporter with this card. It's just an overall versatile Pokemon. So now you got to think about your main hitter. Now the main hitter for this deck is my Gengar. So I run a 3-2-3 Gengar, 3 Gastlys, 2 Haunters, 3 Gengars, and then I run the level X. Now the level X is nice because of its level down poke power. It's the only reason why I run it, and it has more HP. I rarely ever get off that compound pain. Now the Gengars themselves are the Stormfront Gengars. I do not run Vilegar. I'm just saying that right now. It's a speed guard deck. It tries to get that Gengar out, and it tries to get Shadow Rooming on for those easy prizes like the Uxies and Azelfs. Now the reason why I run 3-2-3 is because I have some rare candies in this deck, which I'll get to later. So that's my first main attacker. Now, most of the time it stops right there for most decks, but I have a secondary attacker in this deck for like those bigger Pokemon that Gengar cannot handle by himself, and that is a 2-1-2 Crobat Prime. Now, most decks have one hitter, and the rest of the Pokemon are attacks. In this deck, I have two main hitters. So, the Prime is only active if I have, if there's a high retreat cost Pokemon that my opponent's playing, and I need to get rid of it, I'll play the Crobat Prime. Otherwise, I'll play the Gengars because they're a lot more flexible, they're a lot more versatile. So those are my Pokemon lines for this deck. A 3-2-3 is pretty much basic for your hitter. Now, some people run 4-3-4. I think that's a bit much, but that's just me. Everybody runs their decks differently, and this is just a template for me. Now, in case I do want to Shadow Room an Uxie, my opponent's Uxies have 70 HP. Okay? Shadow Room hits for 6. That's the attack on my Gengar. Shadow Room hits for 6. If I ever need to drop their health down to 60 so I could get them down there, so I could Shadow Room, I play Crobat G. So I could Flash Bite, do 10 damage to an Uxie or an Azelf, and then next turn that turn Shadow Room it and knock it out for an easy prize with my Gengar. That's attack. I also have one Unknown Q. The Unknown Q is there to attach itself to a Sableye if I need to retreat with that. Or if for some reason my Uxies or Azelfs get active, I could get them retreating out of there for free. It attaches itself as a Pokemon tool to a Pokemon so that it retreats for a colorless less. So this effectively gives my whole deck a free retreat cost. Alright, so now energy lines. Now, every deck probably runs a different amount of energy. SP decks run very little energy, and this deck is a speed deck So most of my Pokemon only need 1 energy to attack. So I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Psychic and 3 Rescue. Now, every deck needs a way to recover their Pokemon. And in this deck, Rescue Energy is the best energy for that. And the reason why I run 3 is because of Fainting Spell. If I could pull off a Fainting Spell, most of the time I could recover a Gengar next turn. Just because of Rescue Energy. I run 7 Psychic Energies, which is pretty good because it gives me a consistent draw of Psychic Energy. And a lot of the starter decks will say run at least a third of your deck as energy. That's one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard, because you don't want to have like 5 or 6 energy in your hand that you can only play 1 of each turn. So those are my energy lines. Now, for trainers and supporters, that's the big part of this deck. So I run 2 Seekers in this deck, and those allow me to recover Pokemon off my bench, whether it's an Uxie or an Azelf, so I could reuse them, or if it's a Gengar that's really hurt that I just retreated. And this card synergizes really well with another Stadium card called Broken Time Space, which I run 3 of in this deck. This is so that I could retreat a Gengar for free, bring it back to my hand, and drop it back down right away. Same thing with Rescue Energy. If it gets attacked, it dies. If Fainting Spells goes to my hand, I drop it down next turn. Now, my next trainers, I think every deck needs at least 2 cards that lets them refresh their hands. That could be Professor Oak's New Theory, Judge, or Looker's Investigation. I like Looker's Investigation because it lets me look at my opponent's hand, and I could possibly disrupt them. And I could also look and see if they have trainers and supporters if I want to get a Poltergeist off with my Gengars. 2 hand refreshers. Now, Pokemon Search is the big thing in every deck. I think the basic template for a Pokemon Search is 2 collectors, 2 communications, and 3 babies. Those all look for Pokemon, and I think that 2 of these, and 3 of these have been a good number for me. It's never failed me. It's what I run in every deck. Now, a lot of the Hoppip decks, not Hoppip, Jumpluff decks, run 4 collector, 4 communication. That's fine. It's what they run. That's cool. But this is what I do, and it works for me. And of course, run 1 Luxury Ball. Every deck should have at least 1. Just a great card. I should have put it with the Pokemon Search, but it's just a card that lets you look for 1 Pokemon. That's that. Now I run 4 rare candies because I run 2 Stage 2 evolutions. These let me skip my Stage 1. These let me skip the Haunter, skip the Golbats. This goes straight to the Crobats and the Gengars. Now, if you're running only Stage 1s like Raichus, Steelixes, you don't really need these. You just run Broken Time Space. But these allow me to skip an evolution, which boosts the speed of my deck. I like to run 2 Warp Points. Warp Points specifically to break paralysis, break of effect on my Pokemon if they can't retreat. And also to disrupt my opponent possibly. They're not necessary. I could probably take them out, but I like to keep them in. 2 Warp Points or 2 Switches are nice in any deck, even if you have free retreat cost. Now, I run these Poke Turns, so I could bring back that Crobat and drop it again for more Flash Biting. That's just something in my deck. Not every deck needs these. It's just something that's just specific to my deck. I run 2 Verse Seekers. Verse Seekers are just amazing cards. Having 2 of them in your deck and being able to reuse a supporter is amazing. They are not necessarily required, but I would definitely put 2 of them in your deck if you have them. Now, every deck needs to have something that could look for energy, and I suggest 2 supporters that could. Now, most of the time, Interviewer's Questions is probably the best card because it lets you look for as many energy as you want in your top 8 cards. That's good for decks that need a lot of energy. This deck only needs 1 energy to attack. So I run Cyrus's Conspiracies, which lets me look for an energy a Team Galactic's invention, and another supporter. So these are clearly better, because these could consistently give me energy every time. There's no chances, and I get a supporter out of it, and a Poketurn. Then finally, one Palmer's Contribution. As your Pokemon are getting knocked out, you don't want to run out of the Pokemon that could hit hard. So Palmer's Contribution takes them out of your discard pile and shuffles them back into your deck. It's overall, I only run about one. One of these or a Flower Shop Lady should cut it. And I forgot one Pokemon, but I run a Frostlass. And the reason why I run this Frostlass is because of that Sleep Inducer attack. It lets me switch one of my opponent's Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon, and then the new Pokemon's asleep. This is good against Vilegar, this is good against Juggernaut decks. It's just a good disruption card. And it synergizes well with my Crobat, where I'll attack with this thing, bring out a Pokemon, put it to sleep, and then I'll send out a Crobat Prime and use Severe Poison on it, and then it'll probably die. So that is my deck, my purple potato deck. And this deck just works for me. And most decks that I run follow the same template, you know, 2 Verse Seekers, 2 ways to recover Pokemon, whether that's Rescue Energy or Pokemon Rescue, 1 General Recovery card, 3-2-3 lines if you're running Stage 2s, 4 Rare Candies if you're running Stage 2s. If you're running Stage 1s, I'd say run 3 BTSs with 3-3 lines of your main hitters, and then whatever else. So, and then 2 Pokemon to start with, at least 2 in your deck. If you rely on starting with those Pokemon, you'll probably want to run 4 of them. So, alright, I'm out.